My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole $200, $0 from our joint account to fund her affair, and now she's trying to claim half of our house. I just found out she's been lying about everything. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. The story starts with a shock so brutal it still feels unreal some days. My wife was always a bit of a bitch, bossy, manipulative, and always quick with a lie when she thought she could get away with it. But I never suspected she'd go this far. It all began a few months ago. Things had felt off for a while. Started working late more often, claiming it was just business dinners or important meetings. She'd come home tired, a little more distant, and sometimes she'd get defensive when I asked about her day. I chalked it up to work stress, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Still, I didn't want to admit it. I loved her and I convinced myself she was just busy or maybe just tired of me. Then came the night I found out. I remember it clearly. I was working late myself, but I decided to check our joint bank account, something I rarely did unless I was suspicious. I didn't expect to find what I did. There was a massive withdrawal, $200, $0 gone out of nowhere. It was more than our annual income, and I couldn't understand how she managed that kind of money without telling me. My heart started pounding. I thought maybe it was some kind of mistake, so I logged into the bank app again, double-checked. It was all legit. My mind raced. I remembered that had been acting weird lately, secretive texts, her phone always hidden, and she suddenly became obsessed with her work. She'd come home late, smelling strange, acting nervous if I tried to get close. I started digging through her things, hopping to find some clue. That's when I found her phone hidden in her purse, and I saw a message thread with her boss, Mark. It was explicit. They'd been sexting, talking about meeting up, and I could see from the timestamps that it had been going on for months. I was furious. My first thought was to confront her immediately, but I hesitated. I needed proof. Something concrete, so I kept digging. I saw she'd been transferring money to an account linked to Mark, almost as if she was funding her affair with my money. That's when I realized she'd stolen the money from our joint account, thinking I wouldn't notice. It felt like my entire world was collapsing. All the trust I'd built with her over the years suddenly felt like a lie. The next day I sat her down. I didn't yell at first, I was numb. I showed her the bank statements, the messages, the transfers. Her face went pale and she tried to lie her way out of it. She said she was just talking to a friend, that I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her. She called me paranoid, crazy even. But I wasn't buying it. I knew she'd been lying about everything, and I knew the truth was worse than I could have imagined. She'd been cheating on me with her boss, stealing from us, and I was left staring at a woman I thought I knew, now a stranger hiding a mountain of lies. After that confrontation, everything changed. I felt like I was in a nightmare I could wake up from. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even cry anymore. I was just numb, staring at her while she kept insisting she hadn't meant for any of it to happen, that she was just caught up in the moment, and that Mark was just some guy she'd been talking to for months. Yeah, right. Like I was supposed to believe that she didn't know what she was doing with all that money, or that those explicit texts were just innocent chats. She kept throwing out excuses, saying she was stressed, that she needed something different in her life. She even had the nerve to claim that I was overreacting, that I was paranoid and insecure. She told me she loved me, that she'd never cheat if she didn't have to, and that she'd never steal from me. But I could see right through her bullshit. The way she looked at me, like I was some kind of obstacle she wanted to get rid of, made my stomach turn. I was furious, but mostly I felt a crushing sense of betrayal. How could she do this to us? To me? I'd worked my ass off for years building a life, a home, savings, everything we had. And she, my wife, was out there funding her affair with her boss with our life savings. I kept replaying the moment I saw that deposit, 200 gone, and I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I held back. I knew I needed to think, to plan. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The lies, the betrayal, the money stolen, the way she'd lied about her work, her late nights, her supposed stress. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? She'd always been good at hiding things, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed everything we'd built. I started to realize I needed to get ahead of her. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd change or admit everything. I had to take control. I started making plans, gathering evidence, talking to a lawyer. I knew I had to protect myself, my money, and my home. I also knew I couldn't stay married to someone who'd lie and cheat like this. The betrayal was too deep, too personal. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt all at once, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I had no intention of stopping her lies or her manipulations. She kept trying to play the victim, crying and insisting she was sorry, but not really explaining anything. She spun stories about how stressed she was at work, how Mark was just a friend, and how she never meant for me to find out the money was gone. She even claimed that I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid and jealous for no reason. That was her favorite line, always the victim, always the innocent party. But I wasn't buying it. I saw through her bullshit. She'd lied about everything from the start. She lied about her whereabouts, her late nights, her texts, and now she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How could I have missed all the signs? I thought I knew. I thought we had a good life. Turns out it was all a lie. I started to look into legal options. I spoke with a lawyer the next day. I told him everything about the affair, the stolen money, the house, the lies. He told me I had a solid case for divorce and for reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The $200, $0 she stole was a clear breach of trust, and I could also argue that her infidelity and betrayal justified cutting her out of my life completely. It was a brutal realization, but I knew I couldn't stay with someone who'd do this to me. Meanwhile, kept trying to spin her stories. She'd come up with more excuses, more lies, trying to paint herself as the victim. She told me she was done with Mark, that she'd stopped seeing him, but I didn't believe her. I knew she'd lied about everything before, so why would she be honest now? The more she begged, the more I saw her for what she truly was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd done everything in her power to destroy our life together. I started gathering evidence. I downloaded all her messages, saved bank statements, took screenshots of the transfers. I wanted to make sure I had everything in case she tried to hide or destroy any proof. It was a brutal process, going through all her lies, but I needed to be prepared. I also started talking to friends and family, letting them know what was happening. I needed support, and I knew I couldn't do this alone. The hardest part was the emotional toll. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I didn't see her true colors sooner. I was devastated, but at the same time I knew I had to be strong. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I decided I'd fight for my rights, for what was left of the life I thought I had, and I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. It was time to take control and get my life back on track. Once I had all my evidence in place, I knew it was time to act. I sat down with my lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Mike who had handled a few messy divorces before. I laid everything out: her affair with Mark, the stolen $200, $0, the lies, the manipulations. Mike told me I had a strong case, especially since I could prove the money was transferred to her boss's account and that she'd lied repeatedly. The plan was to file for divorce, claim back the stolen money, and protect my rights to the house. I remember feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I finally had proof, that I wasn't just some naive fool blind to her lies. Dread because I knew this was going to get ugly, was the type to fight dirty, and I was prepared for her to try and spin everything in her favor. She'd always been good at twisting things to her advantage, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The day I served her divorce papers was one of the most intense moments of my life. She was furious, of course. Her face turned red with rage when she saw the documents. She started yelling, calling me all sorts of names: paranoid, jealous, insecure, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. She said I was crazy for thinking she'd do something like this. But I just sat there calm, knowing I had everything documented. I told her I wasn't going to let her steal from me, ruin my reputation, or walk away with half our house after what she'd done. Her reaction was classic. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was destroying her life, that she loved me, and that I was overreacting. But I cut her off. I told her that her actions had consequences and that I wasn't going to be a pushover anymore. I was done playing nice. I was tired of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude whenever she didn't get her way. The legal process moved fast after that. She tried to contest the divorce, claiming she deserved half the house because she contributed to it. She argued she was entitled to a share of everything because she was married to me. But I had proof she'd been lying about her work, that she'd stolen money, and that she'd been unfaithful. I knew I'd win, but that didn't make it any easier to see her trying to manipulate the system. Meanwhile, she started throwing tantrums, trying to turn friends and family against me, claiming I was abusive and trying to ruin her reputation. It was classic playing the victim to hide her guilt, but I didn't care. I knew the truth and I was determined to see this through. Every day I spent fighting her, I felt the weight of betrayal but also a sense of justice. I was finally taking control of my life again, and I wasn't going to let her destroy what little was left of it. The court hearings were intense, but I had everything laid out clearly. My lawyer presented the evidence. The bank statements showing the $200, $0 withdrawal, the texts between and Mark, the transfer records. I could see her trying to play innocent, but it was obvious she'd been caught dead to rights. She kept insisting she was sorry, that she never meant for any of it to happen, but her words rang hollow. The judge wasn't buying her excuses, especially once I laid out how she'd lied about her whereabouts, how she'd manipulated her way into stealing from us, and how she'd been unfaithful for months. His face was a mix of anger and desperation. She tried to argue that she'd contributed to the house, that she deserved half of everything because she was married to me. She even claimed that I was controlling, that she'd only done all this because she felt trapped. I wanted to laugh. She'd been the one controlling, lying, and sneaking around behind my back. I kept thinking about how she'd always been bitchy, condescending, and manipulative, and now she was trying to turn the tables. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. She awarded me full custody of the house, and I got back the entire $200, $0 she'd stolen. The court also ordered her to pay me damages for the betrayal and the financial loss. When I heard the verdict, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted, but at the same time I was numb. All I could think about was how I'd trusted her, how she'd thrown everything away for a stupid affair and greed. After the court decision, her true colors came out even more. She stormed out of the courtroom, screaming at me, calling me a monster, claiming I'd ruined her life. She threatened to fight me in every way possible, but I knew I'd done what I had to do. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me or drag me through the mud anymore. I'd been betrayed beyond belief, but I was finally taking control. The aftermath was brutal. I moved out of the house, leaving her behind. I blocked her on everything, her number, social media, email. I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I started rebuilding my life, focusing on my work, friends, and myself. I felt a strange mixture of relief, anger, and sadness. I was angry she'd done this to me, but I also felt sadness for the person I'd thought she was. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and I'll never take my life or my money for granted again. I'll always be cautious about who I let into my world, and most importantly, I understand that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, even if it means facing the worst betrayal possible. If you're ever in a situation like this, my advice is to gather proof, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Because in the end, justice might be slow, but it's worth it. Now I spend a lot of time thinking about how everything unfolded and what I've truly learned from it all. I used to believe in fairy tale endings, thought marriage was forever, that if you loved someone, that was enough. Turns out, love isn't enough if the person you trust the most turns out to be a complete stranger hiding behind a mask of lies. It's a hard lesson, but one I had to learn the hard way. I've come to realize that betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound. It's a betrayal of trust, of the life you thought you shared, and of the future you envisioned. Actions showed me her true character, selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything we built for her own greed and selfish needs. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her attempts to turn the world against me, they all revealed who she really was. But I also learned that I am stronger than I thought. I faced the worst possible betrayal and came out on the other side still standing. I fought for my rights, for my dignity, and for my sanity. I refused to be a victim, and I refused to let her take everything from me. I've rebuilt my life, and I'm finally in a place where I can breathe again. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, trust me, it gets better. It's going to hurt like hell and you'll question everything, maybe even yourself. But don't give up. Gather your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Don't let anyone manipulate or lie their way out of accountability. The truth always comes out eventually. And when it does, you'll find your way back to a better life, one that's built on honesty, respect, and real trust. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner, but I also know I can't change the past. All I can do now is move forward, learn from my mistakes, and make sure I never let someone betray me like that again. I hope my story serves as a warning and a lesson. Be cautious, be strong, and never settle for anything less than honesty. Because in the end, that's all we really have, truth, and the courage to stand up for ourselves when everything falls apart.